Self-efficacy and self-respect. Definition of self-esteem by Nathaniel Branden, Ph.D. Defining self-esteem: the majority of us come from unhappy homes. I don't mean to imply that the majority of us had alcoholic parents, experienced sexual or other forms of abuse, or grew up in a hostile environment. I'm referring to the fact that the majority of us spent our formative years in households that featured mixed messages, denials of reality, deceitful parents, and a lack of sufficient respect for our minds and personalities. I'm referring to the typical residents. I remember having a conversation about this matter with renowned family therapist Virginia Satir, who provided an amazing and horrifying illustration of the type of insanity with which so many of us grew up. Imagine a setting with a child, a mother, and a father, she added. The child inquires when he or she notices the mother's unhappy expression, "What's going on, Mommy? You appear dejected." Mother responds, her voice strained and tense, "There is no issue. I am good. Don't disturb your mother." The father then yells fiercely. The young child, who is completely perplexed and unable to comprehend the reprimand, alternately glances between his mother and father. She starts to cry. "Now see what you've done," the mother laments to the father. This narrative appeals to me because it is so commonplace. Let's give it further thought. The youngster recognizes that his or her mother is having a problem and reacts properly. The mother deceives the youngster, undermining his or her accurate perspective of reality. Mother may act in this way because of a misplaced attempt to protect her child, or possibly because she is unable to manage her own anger. She would have confirmed the child's perception if she had said, "Yes, Mommy is feeling a little melancholy right now. Thank you for noticing." She would have strengthened the child's compassion and taught them a crucial lesson about how to deal with sorrow by simply and openly admitting her own unhappiness. In other words, she would have decatastrophized the grief. Father reprimands the child, adding to the absurdity of the situation, either to protect mother or perhaps out of guilt because he cares about mother's unhappiness. Why might a straightforward question be unpleasant if the mother isn't depressed? Why is it inappropriate to inquire as to whether she is sad? And why is Mommy lying if she is? Mother screams at father, chastising him for correcting their child, further confusing the child. Incongruities piled on top of each other, contradictions compounded. How does the youngster interpret the circumstances? The child may frantically look for anything to do or someone to play with outside as they try to rapidly forget the occurrence while suppressing their thoughts and views. And can we blame the child's well-intentioned parents if they act in a way that encourages her to believe that sight is hazardous and that there is safety in blindness if she retreats into unconsciousness to escape the dreadful feeling of being trapped in a nightmare? Without villains, a story without villains, the plot is unexceptional. Nobody is likely to think that the parents have negative motivations. However, by choosing to ignore obvious truths, parents give the youngster the idea that she lives in a confusing world where perception is unreliable and cognition is pointless. Add a million more or less similar incidents, none of which the youngster will likely recall in the future, but all of which will almost surely have an overall negative impact on the child's development. How can a child's self-esteem grow if she does come to the opinion that her mind is powerless or that its potency is dubious? Without it, how would your self-esteem grow? And how will she deal with life without it? Complex elements affect our self-esteem. I don't want to imply that the degree of our self-esteem is based on how our parents treat us. It's more complicated than that. We must play a crucial part of our own. Both science and philosophy refute the idea that humans are essentially pawns who are molded and controlled by our surroundings. We are creators and not just reactors or responders. We are causative agents in our own right and engaged participants in the drama of our lives. But it is obvious that a family's environment can have a significant impact, either positively or negatively. Parents have the power to encourage self-confidence and respect in their children or to egregiously obstruct the acquisition of these traits. They can express that they don't think their child is capable or good, or the exact opposite. They can either create a setting where the child feels safe and comfortable, or they can instill fear. They can encourage the development of positive self-esteem, or they can take every action possible to undermine it. Barriers to self-esteem development. When parents do these things, it puts a child's development of self-esteem at serious risk. Send the message that the kid isn't enough. Reprimand the child for expressing inappropriate emotions. Make fun of or degrade the child. Suggest that the child's feelings or thoughts are worthless or unimportant. Employing guilt or shame to try and control the youngster. Overprotect the youngster, which prevents them from learning normally and developing self-reliance. Raise a child with no rules at all, and consequently no supporting structure, or with regulations that are incongruous, perplexing, taboo, and burdensome, both of which hinder healthy development. Dismiss a child's notion of reality and subtly nudge them toward mental skepticism. Deny a child's vision of reality and subtly urge the child to distrust their thoughts, preventing natural growth in any scenario. Treat obvious facts as untrue in order to disorient the child's sense of reality, such as when an alcoholic father stumbles to the table for dinner, misses the chair, and drops to the floor while the mother continues to eat or converse as if nothing occurred. Use physical violence or the threat of it to terrorize a youngster, creating intense fear as a permanent quality at the child's core. Treating kids like objects for sex. Explain to the youngster that they are evil, undeserving, or sinful by nature. Millions of adults who experience similar childhood trauma are looking for solutions today. Repair their injuries. They are aware that they came into adulthood with a weakness, a lack of self-esteem, whatever language they use to characterize the issue. They are aware that they have an unnamed sense of not being enough, as well as lingering feelings of shame or guilt, widespread self-doubt, or a diffuse sense of unworthiness. Even if they have no idea what self-esteem is or how to build it inside themselves, they are aware of their absence. A self-esteem definition: strong human need. When working with clients, psychotherapists, and teachers try to ignite that underlying sense of self-worth that is allegedly our human inheritance in them. However, that spark is merely a doorway to self-esteem. We must assist those we deal with in growing that sense of value into the full experience of self-esteem if we are to do them fair. The perception that we are suitable for life and its requirements is self-esteem. In more detail, self-esteem is 1. Belief in our capacity to reason and deal with life's issues. 2. Belief in our inherent right to happiness, the conviction that we are worthy, deserving, and entitled to express our needs and desires and to take pleasure in the results of our labors. Strong human need. When working with clients, psychotherapists, and teachers try to ignite that underlying sense of self-worth that is allegedly our human inheritance in them. However, that spark is merely a doorway to self-esteem. We must assist those we deal with in growing that sense of value into the full experience of self-esteem if we are to do them fair. The perception that we are suitable for life and its requirements is self-esteem. In more detail, self-esteem is 1. Belief in our capacity to reason and deal with life's issues. 2. Belief in our inherent right to happiness, the conviction that we are deserving, entitled, and capable of standing up for our needs and wishes and needs, desires, and to take pleasure in the results of our labors. Self-worth is a strong human urge. It is a fundamental human need that contributes significantly to the process of living, is necessary for good and healthy development, and has survival value. When we don't feel good about ourselves, our psychological development is stifled. A healthy sense of self-worth functions as the immune system of awareness, offering resilience, sturdiness, and the ability to regenerate. Low self-esteem affects our ability to persevere through life's challenges. When faced with challenges that a stronger sense of self could overcome, we fall apart. The drive to avoid pain often has a greater impact on us than the desire to feel joy. Positives don't have as much influence on us as negatives do. Substance abuse and self-esteem. These observations aid in our comprehension of addiction. The unconscious motivation behind addiction to alcohol, drugs, or unhealthy relationships is almost always to relieve pain and anxiety. Tranquilizers and anodynes are what we develop an addiction to. Fear and suffering are the enemy we are attempting to flee. We are compelled to consume increasing amounts of the poison that is killing us when the solutions we have selected fail and make our issues worse. Addicts experience more terror than the average person, not less. Their suffering is worse, not milder, severe. We cannot achieve self-esteem through drug or alcohol use, just as we cannot find happiness through unhealthy relationships. By engaging in behaviors that promote self-hatred, we cannot develop self-esteem. The cosmos is a terrifying place if we don't trust in ourselves, neither in our ability nor in our goodness. Recognizing our worth. This does not necessarily imply that we are unable to pursue any true ideals. Some of us may be extremely productive workaholics who are motivated to prove their value to people like their fathers who told them they wouldn't amount to anything but failures despite having the aptitude and drive to accomplish great things. However, it does imply that we will be less productive and imaginative than we are capable of being, and that our capacity to celebrate our successes will be severely limited. We will never feel that our efforts are enough. We tend to perceive the world as being available to us and to react correctly to challenges and opportunities if we do have realistic trust in our minds and values and if we feel secure inside ourselves. Self-confidence inspires, energizes, and motivates. It motivates us to succeed and enables us to enjoy and take pride in our accomplishments. We are able to feel content thanks to it. Some modern writers appear to argue that all we need to succeed is a positive feeling of self-worth. Promise pleasure and success. It's more complicated than that. We have multiple needs, and there isn't a single answer to every issue we face in life. Our well-being depends on having a strong sense of self, Yet that alone is not enough. Its presence does not ensure fulfillment, but its absence ensures some level of worry, frustration, and hopelessness. By virtue of the fact that its absence affects our capacity to operate, self-esteem declares itself to be in need. As a result, we might conclude that it has survival value, and never more than it is right now. We have reached a point in time where self-esteem, which has always been a crucial psychological need, has now developed into a crucial economic need. This is a quality that is essential for adaptability to a world that is becoming more complex, difficult, and competitive. Future resources for psychology, higher levels of education and training are needed than were necessary for previous generations due to the transition from a manufacturing society to an information society. The shift from physical labor to mind work is the primary employee activity, and the emergence of a global economy marked by rapid change, accelerating scientific and technological advancements, and an unprecedented level of competitiveness. Everyone who is familiar with business culture is aware of this. The fact that these advances also place new demands on our psychological resources is something that is less well known. These changes specifically call for increased capacity for creativity, self-management, accountability, and self-direction. At every level of a company organization, from senior management to first-line supervisors and even to entry-level employees, this question is posed not only at the top. A modern company can no longer be managed by a small number of thoughtful individuals and a sizable number of followers. Organizations now require not only a previously unseen level of expertise and knowledge among all participants, but also a level of increased personal autonomy, self-reliance, self-trust, and the ability to exercise initiative, or, in other words, self-esteem. This implies that there is a huge economic need for individuals who have a healthy sense of self-worth. This is a brand new phenomenon historically. Making wise decisions requires self-confidence. We need a higher level of personal liberty in a society where there are more options than ever before, and frontiers of infinite possibilities are in front of us everywhere we turn. This implies a larger need for exercising independent judgment, developing our own resources, and accepting accountability for the decisions, values, and acts that form our life. It also implies a greater need for self-confidence and self-reliance. The more conscious choices and decisions we must make, the greater the urgency of our need for self-esteem. We are more likely to persevere when faced with challenging or complex problems if we have faith in the power of our minds, if we believe we can think, learn, and comprehend. By persevering, we frequently succeed rather than fail, which validates and strengthens our belief in our own effectiveness. If we have any doubts about the power of our intellect or lack faith in our ability to think clearly, we are more likely to quit up than to persevere. By giving up, we experience more failures than successes, which confirms and supports our poor perception of ourselves. Assuming challenging goals stimulates high self-esteem, and achieving challenging goals fosters high self-esteem. Confining oneself to the familiar and undemanding weakens self-esteem because low self-esteem wants the protection of the familiar and undemanding. The more self-esteem we have, the better able we are to handle hardship in our personal or professional lives, the quicker we are to get back up after falling, and the more drive we have to start over. The stronger our self-esteem, the more ambitious we tend to be, not necessarily in terms of our careers or finances, but rather in terms of the emotional, artistic, and spiritual experiences we want to have in life. The less we believe in ourselves, the less we strive for and the less we are likely to accomplish. Either course of action has a propensity to reinforce and perpetuate itself. The more confident we are in ourselves, the more likely we are to develop healthy relationships as opposed to poisonous ones. Like attracts like, health attracts health, and persons with high self-esteem find vitality and expansiveness in others to be more alluring than emptiness and reliance. Attraction to people with similar levels of self-esteem. It's a fundamental tenet of human relationships that we tend to feel most at home and at ease among others who have self-esteem levels similar to our own. People with strong self-esteem are often drawn to other people with high self-esteem. People with medium self-esteem are often drawn to people with similar self-esteem. When one has poor self-esteem, they look for it in others. Relationships between two people who both have low self-esteem are the most destructive since two depths do not make a height. I'm thinking of a patient I once saw who was up believing she was evil and unworthy of happiness, kindness, or respect. She married a man who, predictably, knew he was unlovable and was overcome by self-hatred. Before others could be cruel to him, he safeguarded himself by becoming cruel to them. Since she knew that abuse was her fate, she did not protest his mistreatment. Her growing distance and disengagement from him did not surprise him because, in his mind, no one could ever love him. Together, they had endured 20 years of agony as a means of proving how accurate their assessments of themselves and life were. The wife expressed surprise when I told to her that she hadn't experienced much happiness, asking, "Are people ever truly happy?" Poor self-esteem, a time bomb. While having low self-esteem can significantly restrict a person's goals and successes, the effects of the issue need not be immediately apparent. Sometimes the effects are more subtly manifested. While someone who is motivated by a desire for achievement and uses genuine talent can advance in their job, the time bomb of a negative self-concept can silently tick for years. Then, almost out of nowhere, he begins. Since self-respect is the basis of respect for others, those who have higher levels of self-esteem are more likely to treat others with respect, benevolence, goodwill, and justice because we are less likely to see others as threats. In his haste to deliver more elaborate demonstrations of his ability, he may have compromised morally or legally. He then commits even more egregious crimes while assuring himself that he is beyond good and evil, as if daring fate to bring him to justice. We can only see how many years he has been persistently marching toward the conclusion of an unconscious life script he may have started writing at the age of 3 when his life and career erupt in disgrace and destruction. Efficacy and respect for oneself. Two related dimensions of one's self-esteem are 1. A feeling of self-worth. 2. An awareness of one's own value. It is the combined sum of these two elements as a fully realized psychological experience. Self-efficacy is defined as cognitive self-trust and cognitive self-reliance. It also refers to confidence in one's ability to think, judge, choose, and make decisions, as well as understanding reality as it relates to one's interests and needs. Confidence in one's worth, a positive attitude toward one's right to life and happiness, ease in articulating one's ideas, needs, and wants in a respectful manner, and the conviction that happiness is a natural inheritance are all examples of having self-respect. No matter what other assets a person possessed, we would notice the presence of a self-esteem deficit if that person felt unprepared to handle life's problems or lacked basic self-trust and confidence in his or her own thinking. No matter what other great traits a person exhibited, we would still be able to tell if they lacked a basic sense of self-respect, felt unworthy or undeserving of others' affection or respect, was unable to articulate their opinions, wants, or needs, or felt unentitled to happiness. The two foundations of self-esteem. The two cornerstones of a healthy self-esteem are self-efficacy and self-respect. Self-esteem suffers when either is lacking. Due to their fundamentality, they serve as the term's distinguishing qualities. They convey the substance of self-esteem rather than its derivative or subsidiary connotation, the sensation of control over one's life that we identify with psychological well-being, as well as the sense of being at the vital center of one's existence, as opposed to being a passive spectator and a victim of events, are generated by the experience of self-efficacy, in contrast to either alienated estrangement from the human race on the one hand, or mindless submersion into the tribe on the other. The experience of self-respect makes it possible to have a charitable, non-neurotic sense of community with other people, the fellowship of independence and mutual regard. Self-esteem levels within a person will inevitably fluctuate, just as there are oscillations in all psychological states. We must consider a person's typical degree of self-esteem. How does self-esteem feel to us? Although we often refer to self-esteem as a belief in oneself, speaking about a disposition to perceive oneself in a certain manner is more appropriate. Which way? To summarize, 1. As essentially capable of overcoming life's challenges, hence, confidence in one's mind and thought processes, self-efficacy. 2. As someone to whom achievement, success, respect, friendship, and love are suitable, self-respect. 3. As deserving of success and happiness. Definition: formally self-escaping FM. In a nutshell, self-esteem is the disposition to feel oneself as capable of handling life's challenges and as deserving of enjoyment. It should be noted that this definition omits information about childhood environmental factors that promote healthy self-esteem, later internal generators, and emotional or behavioral outcomes. It merely states what the self-evaluation is about and includes. Am I saying that my definition of self-esteem is unchangeable and unchangeable in any way? In no way. Definitions are based on context. They relate to a specific level of understanding. As understanding increases, definitions incline to become more exact. In my lifetime, I might discover a better, more precise, and exact manner to express the concept's core. Perhaps another person might. But given the knowledge we now have, I am unable to come up with any substitute phrase that more precisely captures the special component of the human experience known as self-esteem. In my definition, competence refers to a metaphysical, not Western, idea. That is, it has to do with the basic nature of things, or more specifically, how we are inherently connected to reality. It does not result from a specific cultural value bias. No community on earth, no society even imaginable, has people who do not struggle to meet their basic requirements and struggle to make the proper adjustments to nature and the human condition. as I've heard indicated. The concept of efficacy in this fundamental meaning is not a Western artifact. If we think there is a culture or society where we will not have to deal with the issue of adapting to life, we are deluding ourselves. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for more.